So you get to the very end of Plato's masterpiece, The Republic. He's spent hundreds of pages meticulously building an entire city and speech, and then he turns his attention to the artists, the storytellers, the poets. And what he proposes is, frankly, one of the most shocking and controversial arguments in the entire history of philosophy.
He hits us with this just shocking question. To create a truly just society, would we have to exile our greatest artists? I mean, it sounds totally unthinkable, right? But for Plato, this wasn't just some abstract thought experiment. It was a deadly serious problem that got right to the heart of his entire project.
And to really get why he'd even ask that, you've got to understand what he calls the ancient quarrel between philosophy and poetry. He saw these two as powerful, competing forces, basically fighting for control of the human soul. On one side, you have philosophy, which is all about seeking eternal truth through reason, engaging with what truly is. And on the other side, poetry, which he says deals in appearances, works its magic on our emotions, and lives in the world of opinion.
You see, for Plato, this isn't just some casual debate about what makes for good or bad taste. The stakes are way, way higher. We're talking about the very foundation of a just state and, even more importantly, a just individual.
We have to remember the whole point of this exercise, right? The goal of building this ideal city, the Callipolis, is to see justice itself magnified, to understand it on a huge scale. But the real project, the one that matters most, has always been about building a well-ordered, just human soul. And because of that, art, with its incredible power to shape what we believe and what we desire, isn't just some side issue. It's a major political and ethical concern.
So how does Plato actually build his case against the poets? Well, it all kicks off with his metaphysical argument, his theory about what art fundamentally is. And for Plato, the key word, the central concept, is imitation.
The Greek word here is mimesis, and Plato's big claim is that the artist doesn't imitate true reality, that is, the eternal world of the forms, but only the appearance of physical things. Now, for a philosopher who is completely obsessed with truth, this is a huge, damning distinction. The artist, in this view, is a master of illusion, not someone who brings us knowledge.
Plato illustrates this brilliantly with his famous analogy of the three beds. Okay, so first he says there is the true eternal idea or form of the bed. This is like the perfect blueprint of bedness itself, the highest reality. Then, second, you have the physical bed, the one a carpenter builds. The carpenter looks to the form to guide his work, so his creation is already one step removed from the ultimate truth. But then comes the painter. He doesn't paint the form of the bed, and he doesn't even capture the full reality of the physical bed. He only paints how that bed looks from one specific angle.
And this all leads to Plato's really stark conclusion. The work of art is twice removed from the truth. It's nothing more than a copy of a copy. It's a shadow of a physical object, which itself is just a shadow of the true form. Art, he's saying, deals in surfaces, not in substance.
I mean, Plato is just relentless on this point. The artist, he argues, creates a world of phantoms, a world that is metaphysically bankrupt. It's a shadow of a shadow, and it's constantly pulling us further away from the real world of being and deeper into the fake world of seeming.
This should sound familiar. Think all the way back to the allegory of the cave. Remember the prisoners chained up, staring at shadows flickering on a wall, totally convinced that those shadows are reality? Well, for Plato, the artist is like someone who, instead of trying to lead us out of the cave and into the sunlight of truth, just gets really, really good at making more convincing, more entertaining shadows on the wall. From this perspective, art doesn't set us free. It actually reinforces our chains to illusion.
But, the problem isn't just metaphysical. It's not just about what's real and what isn't. Plato is actually even more concerned with the psychological damage he thinks art can do. And this argument builds directly on his model of the human soul. To get this, we need to bring back Plato's incredible image of the soul from Book 9. He asks us to picture our soul as this bizarre composite creature. There's a rational part, symbolized by a little man inside us, a spirited part, like a lion, which handles honor and anger, and finally, a desiring, appetitive part, which he calls a many-headed beast. A just soul, a healthy soul, is one where the little man, or reason, with the help of the lion, stays in firm, wise control of that beast. So the big question becomes, which part of this complex soul does art feed? Well, philosophy, Plato argues, is like food for the rational part. It strengthens that little man inside us. But poetry, he says, especially tragedy and the great epics, does the exact opposite. It bypasses our reason completely and speaks directly to our rawest emotions, our grief, our passion, our pity, our desires. It feeds and waters the very parts of us that reason is supposed to be keeping in check.
I mean, think about it. When you're watching a really intense tragedy, we see a hero's suffering, and we feel this deep sorrow and pity, right? In our own lives, we would try to control those feelings, to be moderate. But in the theater, we're actually encouraged to let go, to weep, to completely indulge those passions. Plato sees this as a kind of dangerous emotional practice.
And this is his profound psychological insight. Art doesn't just entertain us, it actively trains our souls. And by repeatedly indulging these powerful, irrational emotions, we're actually strengthening the many-headed beast inside us. We're making it harder and harder for our rational part to govern our lives day to day.
Okay, so we've got a metaphysical problem. Art is a counterfeit of truth. And we've got a psychological problem. It messes up the soul's proper order. All of this leads Plato to his final, deeply ethical verdict on art.
And this really brings us to the core of his verdict. Art cannot be judged by how beautiful it is or how entertaining it is. It has to be judged by its effect on our character. Since art is one of the most powerful tools out there for shaping the soul, it absolutely must be held to the highest standard of truth and virtue.
And this ties all the way back to the very challenge that kicked off the entire Republic. Remember, Plato's brothers complaining that poets like Homer make injustice look profitable and make justice look like a thankless chore. If our gods are shown to be petty and vengeful, and our greatest heroes are slaves to their passions, what kind of lesson is that teaching our kids? It's teaching them that vice is normal and that virtue is for suckers.
And so, we finally arrive at that infamous conclusion. The purely imitative poets, the creators of these powerful illusions that appeal to the worst parts of us, they must be politely but firmly escorted to the city limits and exiled. They are a danger to the health of the state and the soul.
But does this really mean Plato is just some kind of book-burning censor who hates all art? Is the case really closed?
Well, not quite. And this is a nuance that gets missed all the time, but it's absolutely crucial for understanding what he's actually arguing. This isn't a simple blanket ban. It's a profound challenge.
In fact, Plato himself leaves the door wide open. He says that if the champions of poetry can make a rational, philosophical case for her, in prose, he insists, not in verse, and prove that she is beneficial to the soul and the state, then she will be welcomed back with open arms. The challenge has been thrown down. Art must justify its existence on philosophy's terms.
So, after setting up the rules for a healthy soul, and after dealing with the powerful influence of art, Plato pivots to his final massive theme. The whole book has argued that it's always better to be just than unjust, no matter what. So what then is the ultimate fate of this well-ordered soul?
Plato's whole critique, then, leaves us with this profound and timeless challenge. He absolutely grants art's incredible power to affect us. The question he forces us to ask is not if art moves us, but where it moves us. Toward truth or deeper into the cave.